Yes, this is another review, but I'm catching up with all the things I've been neglecting recently, so just go with it. Hi guys, it's April, and I'm gonna do this review the same way I do all of my other reviews. I'm gonna have the non-spoiler section up front, followed by the spoiled-filled dump afterwards. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I'll let you know when that transition happens. Also, I will have it noted that I received a copy of this book for a free and honest review, but that in no way swayed my opinions on it. A Girl from Nowhere by James Maxwell is the story of Taman, who was crippled when he was young when his parents were killed and was raised by his aunt. They live in the wasteland where any disadvantage will get you killed, so his aunt brought him up to be a warrior. Then one day, Taman's aunt is also killed, and Taman begins a quest to find the White City. At the same time, this is the story of Selena, who is a mystic who doesn't really want her powers. It has only brought her a hard life, and she is being forced to lead others to the White City. The two of them end up meeting up on their journey to the White City, both hoping that the city will be the haven that they are looking for. The world building in this story is wonderful. I loved seeing all of the different elements that make up this world. This world, this wasteland, is completely surrounded by fire. Nobody knows why. It's a very arid, desert-like place where survival and water and food and supplies are all mixed together, which is why everybody is in search for this White City. There's also this introduction of the mystic system, which I quite enjoyed. And then later in the story, there is this gladiatorial system was introduced to the story, and this is when things really took off for me. I struggled at the beginning to really get into the story. There was a lot of telling instead of showing. You had the characters explaining other characters, but we never really got to see those other characters and the traits they were talking about. The story was told by the perspective of these two main characters, Taman and Selena, but at the weirdest times, we'd suddenly switch perspectives to some of the minor characters, which made things feel weird. And this ended up leading to the relationship development in this story, even between some of the minor characters and the friendships that were formed. It didn't feel authentic. Some of these connections felt like they were forced there to move the plot along, or because we wanted to make this a slight romance read. I don't think that was necessary. The connection between the two main characters could have been built up a little bit more. This story had the feel of an epic journey. But with the number of pages we got and how much of the story that was told, we lost a lot of that development and that build. And so the connection as a reader to these characters dropped. I did really enjoy the story that was being told and the worlds and the different creatures and races that were wrapped up into this story. I felt like it almost needed more to it to make it really feel fleshed out. Mainly because you were introduced to a lot of politics and these characters that had these backstories that were quickly thrown at you that could have been something of weight and story all of their own. I wanted to see more from this story, but the ending did leave it at a place that I found very fascinating, and I do believe this is a trilogy, so there is more to it than just this story. I might have to hunt those down and get more into this world because I am fascinated, especially by some of the creatures in this world. Griff is by far the one who stole the story. Griff is a creature that Taman ended up befriending and raising, and I just think that dynamic there, if there was more of that in this book, I would have loved it so much more. So this is the point in my review in which I'm going to switch to the spoiled-filled section. So if you want to read this story and come back and start a conversation with me, let me know. Also, let me know if you plan on reading this book. I would love to hear from you guys. Otherwise, feel free to stick around and just enjoy whatever ends up coming out of my mouth, I suppose. There was so much going on in this story. I think that this one book could have been multiple books if we really wanted to develop this world, if we really wanted to develop these characters and the relationships that were involved. I think then we could have moved away from this telling mindset into more of this showing mindset, and maybe the relationship between Taman and Selena wouldn't have felt so insta-lovey and a little forced. I get it that they're two characters who are the same age, they've both had a relatively hard life, and then all of a sudden they're thrown in together and this thing starts to happen, but it really doesn't happen, and it isn't until more of the end in which some of this weird connecting starts to happen. And I know Taemin is crippled, and a whole bunch of the story is centered around the fact that he is still able to do quite a lot. He's been trained by his aunt, who apparently was actually from the White City. She was a warrior there, and she had escaped after not agreeing with a lot of things that were starting to go on, which really makes sense. But even with that disability, it was hard to believe some of his warrior-like aspects, especially when all of a sudden it would become a huge weakness over here and part of the plot, but then for whatever reason he was able to completely ignore that same thing over here and survive. So there was some inconsistencies there, and maybe it was just adrenaline and that survival instinct, I suppose. I did like seeing the fact that his disability wasn't necessarily what defined him. That was good to see. But at the same time, you have him, Taemin, trying to convince Selena that the things that she was born with, the things that she has, don't define her, but she also needs to learn to deal with it. But at the same time, he's over here talking about, hey, I just want to get my foot fixed. The whole point is I've been living with this for how long? I have learned to be quite good despite this disability, but hey, I want to get rid of it. So you have two characters who are essentially going for the same thing, but one of them is trying to convince the other one that they don't need to fix said thing. I mean, I get it, because a crippled foot that bad, especially in the world they live in, is not a good thing. And the fact that he survived as long as he had is amazing. But Selena has been abused and shoved around for all of her life because of her ability, which is just as bad, and it's almost amazing that she survived as long as she has as well. But I don't know. There's just some of those little quirks within the story that I struggled with a bit. I really love the protector plotline of all of this ruler of this white city who is just in it for more power, who's trying to hide the fact that there is no water in the well anymore. We need to find more water, but instead of connecting with the other races and trading with the other races, let's create a war so that I gain more power, and then we could probably just take their water afterwards. So I liked how all of that was built out and how that ended up affecting other things down the line. I thought that was very well thought out, especially when you learn that some of the guards are actually the ones that killed Taemin's parents and aunts just to start this war. Some of that deeper thought process into the plot I enjoyed. So there was a lot of thought in this story. I just felt like it was condensed too much, and it could have been built out into more of an epic Odyssey type style thing. So those are some of my thoughts on this book. I, of course, have more, and I would love to talk to you about them. So if you've read this book, tell me your thoughts down below. And of course, if you want to stay up to date every time I upload, subscribe, and I heart your beautiful faces. Bye.